FPL Game Week 30 is not for over 2 weeks, but between them we have international football and of course the big round of FA Cup that will give us massive indications for the rest of the season. In today's video, we're going to do a bit of a discussion, general chat on the state of FPL. What should we be doing when the FA Cup results do come around? If you're looking to wildcard in Game Week 30 or 31, we'll talk about all of that in this video as well. Plus, we'll have a look at my team, and any of you who still have the assistant manager chip available, we will discuss that as well. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here. And just before we dive in, a bit of a caveat, a bit of, notice. This video is not going to give you loads of answers. It's not going to tell you this is who you need to buy. This is the best chip strategy. It's just going to be a bit of a video in case you're a bit bored over the international break. You need something to listen to. We're just going to do a bit of a general chat about a few things. Of course, we'll cover a lot of the big questions like wildcard. We'll discuss the FA Cup. We'll have a look at my team. But if you don't like videos that are going to have a lot of if, buts, and maybes in the video, and it's going to be wait and see for this, wait and see for that, this is probably not going to be the best video for you because, of course, Game Week 30 doesn't start for over 2 weeks. We have the international break. Then we have the big round of the FA Cup, which we will talk about loads in this video. And then we have the Game Week 30 deadline on Tuesday, the 1st of April. There is no more FPL deadlines. There is no more Premier League in March. We are all done for this month, and it is only the 17th. So it's 2.5 weeks, or just over 2 weeks now, until the next deadline. So we won't be talking loads about that. We'll be talking about a few things, wildcard, assistant manager, maybe some of the players to target, and also what to look at when that FA Cup round does roll around in a couple of weeks. Hopefully a little bit of a long-term, maybe slightly longer video. We're just going to chat basically for however long it takes to record the video, and then maybe a few things to look at in my team as well. Unfortunately, I am recording on Monday morning after one of my worst game weeks of the season. Anyone who watched my videos last week know how uncertain I was on basically any transfer route that I could have taken. And in the end, I took the worst route that I possibly could have done. So sadly, it gave me a massive red arrow. I doubled my rank from 10,000 to 19,000, basically to just inside the top 20k. I missed my safety score by 17 points, 6.3 million game week rank. Everything that could have gone wrong basically did. We had a late clean sheet wipeout for Everton. So the transfers that I made, I brought in Evan-Nilsson, I brought in Erling Haaland, and I brought in Williams. Williams could have been Kirkez. It could have been Milenkovic as well. Both of those got attacking returns. I decided to sell Isak and keep Cole Palmer, and Cole Palmer then had an injury after the deadline that we had no idea about. Now, if I'd have known that he was out, I absolutely would have sold him. There was no doubt in my mind that I would have sold him if I knew he would be out. I probably wouldn't have brought Bruno Fernandes, and I still don't think I would have done. I still think I would have changed my plans and probably done Ahmad to Alanga. But basically every other transfer route that I had involved me buying Alanga. I don't think Bruno Fernandes was realistically ever a potential buy for me because I'm looking quite long-term for my team, and he was a great pick for this week, but I still am not certain how much I'd want him going long-term. So I would have had Alanga though, and he scored a brace. Evan-Nilsson came in and didn't do anything. The only real highlights for me this game week was that I did captain Haaland, and he did come in with a few points. Outside of that, there really wasn't anything. Gabriel getting a clean sheet against my own team, looking completely awful with no Cole Palmer in there. So we'll have a look at my team for next week in a moment. Greaves didn't show up, got 0 points, taken off at halftime. Williams, they'd won the game and then they decided to concede some goals. Kluivert and Evan-Nilsson, the only small positives I can take on this is that Evan-Nilsson played 90 minutes, which was more than I thought he was going to play. And he's not in the Brazil squad at the moment. Now, if a few players pull out, he might get called up, but I don't think that's likely. So he has the whole international break off, which means even with the FA Cup before Game Week 30, you would expect Evan-Nilsson to start Ipswich at home. Kluivert is in the Netherlands squad, but he doesn't tend to play that many minutes for them. So that's a bit of a boost for me with Evan-Nilsson. I decided to take the second transfer as also the only other small positive. I'm trying to clutch at straws and take some positives away from this game week. Evan-Nilsson not being on international duty and playing 90 minutes And then me having 2 transfers going into next week. Outside of that, it was a horror show. Every other transfer route I had either basically involved buying Alanga, and some of it involved selling Palmer. Now, at time of recording, we don't know. Apparently, he is going for a scan today. Apparently, it was a hamstring problem that ruled him out of the game against Arsenal, which he sustained in training on Saturday, which is why we didn't get told in the press conference. So let's wait and see on that. But yeah, it wasn't good. The only small positives I'm trying to take are a couple of things. I now have to stare at probably my worst game week in a long time, all over this international break. We have 9 weeks left. Luckily, I've got quite a lot of chips left to play. So still, I'm thinking about 17 points outside the top 10k now, which is not where I wanted to be at the beginning of the game week, but I'll still take it with the assistant manager still to play. It's okay. Season is going well. This game week absolutely went horribly. So just to have a look and talk about when the FA Cup weekend rolls around. So again, it's the 17th today. It's the 18th of April when this video does get uploaded. The FA Cup round takes place on the 29th and 30th of March, the Saturday and Sunday just before the game week 30 deadline. We're also expecting that the FA Cup draw will be taking place on the Sunday evening. So only once this has taken place will we have the ability to start to predict what game week 33 and game week 34 will look like. However, we won't know for certain if the fixtures that need to be moved from game week 34 will be going into game week 35, game week 36, game week 33, which is the most likely, or even just staying in game week 34. We won't know that until they announce it, because it's not 100% certain exactly where they decide it's going to go. On the Tuesday is the game week 30 deadline at 6:15. Now, it is possible that we get the doubles and blanks announced on the Monday or Tuesday. It is absolutely possible, but we don't think that's going to be the case. We think it will be announced later on in the week. So going into Tuesday, we'll know what fixtures maybe need to move, but we won't definitely know where they're going to go. And this is a reminder why I prefer Wildcard 31 over Wildcard 30, just because if you're wildcarding in 30, you can have a good expectation. The likes of Ben Krellin, the likes of Planet FPL, they're going to do good projections of where those fixtures are going to go, but they cannot tell you for certain exactly which weeks the Premier League are going to decide to put them in. So that's the difficulty with wildcarding in game week 30. Now, I don't have a wildcard draft in this video, and a lot of it revolves around the FA Cup. So if you are definitely wildcarding in 30, and the only reason you should definitely be wildcarding in 30 is if your team is an absolute mess. If your team looks okay, you should be planning to wildcard in game week 31 once we get hopefully all of the information that we need. Now, if you definitely are going to wildcard in 30, you probably are going to need triple Newcastle, maybe triple Crystal Palace, depending if you've got the assistant manager left. You're probably going to go with maybe Haaland or Palmer. You're going to go with Mo Salah in there. Outside of that, it will all depend on what happens in the FA Cup, and that will fill in the fringe players, your goalkeepers and stuff like that, and what it means for your chip strategy as well. Then the game week 31 deadline is the Saturday, and we have had all the double game week announcements so far this season on the Friday, and that is when we expect to have the doubles for the rest of the season announced. It could be announced on the Monday or the Tuesday. In theory, is very, very, very likely to be announced that week. It would be very strange for them to delay it past that week. But the prediction is that we will know at some point between game week 30 and game week 31, not before, which is why wildcard 30 might be a little bit difficult if that is your plan. So if your team needs it, you'll be able to do it with good projections. But if your team doesn't need it, I do recommend you continue to wait. So let's have a look at those FA Cup games. So we've got 4 FA Cup ties: Brighton Forest, Fulham Palace, Bournemouth City, Preston, Aston Villa, and you've got the games that they correspond to in game week 34 as a result. So if Brighton were to win, Brighton West Ham would have to move. If Nottingham Forest win, Forest Brentford would have to move, and so on and so forth down the list. Now, the prediction is that most of these will get moved forward to game week 33, excluding Nottingham Forest Brentford. The reason that is very unlikely to is for some reason they put Forest on Monday night in game week 33, so there isn't really time during the midweek to replay another fixture. Having Forest Monday night, Thursday night, FA Cup weekend with Forest still in the FA Cup just doesn't feel like something that they will do. So outside of that, game week 33 is the most likely for all of them. it's more complicated for the teams that are not in Europe anymore. And not just them, but their opponent as well, right? So Bournemouth are not in Europe, but their opponent in game week 34 is Man United. So that's very likely to go in game week 33 because of the midweeks being taken up with European football for Manchester United. European teams, game week 33 is by far the most likely, and then game week 36 could happen. But for non-European teams, so that's like Southampton, Fulham, that's Forest, Brentford, in theory that's Brighton, West Ham in there as well, could go into any of 33, 35, 36, or stay in 34. There is midweek European football in game week 34, but there is nothing stopping Southampton, Fulham just moving to the midweek after, just taking an example, or the Brighton, West Ham. So some of them could stay in game week 34. And this is why wildcarding in game week 30 is really difficult if you don't know exactly where these fixtures are going to go. They'll, like, let's say Forest win, or let's say Brighton win, right? And Brighton West Ham is going to come out, and you plan on bench boosting in game week 33, but you're going to wildcard in game week 30, and suddenly the Brighton West Ham fixture gets moved to the midweek of game week 34, and suddenly they don't double or blank. It changes what your wildcard draft will look like. So we won't talk about this in too much detail, but because the fixtures could go into several different weeks, and we will only be able to predict it as best we can, once we have the FA Cup out the way, we'll be able to give a much clearer prediction, but we won't know for certain until the Premier League go and announce it. So just having a look at my team for next week, I've also added a little graphic on the chips that I've got left. I posted a little bit on general feedback on the channel. Just I'm always looking to improve. And when I've got a couple of weeks over the international break, don't worry, I will be taking some time off. I've got some things planned over the next couple of weeks just for myself as well. But I'm also interested just to know if there's things that you'd like to see on the channel, video ideas, if there's things that you'd like to see every week in specific videos that are not there or that you'd like to see more of. One really simple thing was it's just quite useful to see at this point of the season a reminder of what chips I have left available. So as a reminder, I've used only the triple captain in the second half of the season, which means I've got free hit, wildcard, bench boost, and most importantly, the assistant manager, which is causing quite the headache for me and anyone else who's got the chip left. Now, just some quite interesting stats. So I've got effectively 4 chips left. The average person has about 2.5 chips left if you include the wildcard in the free hit. But if you have a look at the amount of actual game weeks that you can play a chip in, so if you count the assistant manager as 3 game weeks, I've got 6 game weeks out of the last 9 game weeks of the season I will be playing a chip. And the average for the top 10k is about 2.75. Now, that's not comparable. It's probably quite similar in the top 100k. It's maybe slightly higher because the people in the top 10k have often used slightly more chips than the people in a slightly bigger pool of players. But that's generally a pretty good understanding. I posted it on Twitter as well. Generally, people have used the assistant manager, and maybe some people have used one more. So slightly more engaged managers, most of you watching, will probably have somewhere between 3 and 4 chips available. And that is actually probably more than most of the people who are ranked above you. So again, I had a horrible game week. I'm trying to take small positives that I've still got more chips left available. I've still got 2 transfers this week, which again is probably more than most people have, given that most people either used all their transfers or took a -4 in game week 29. So just a small bit of positive. So looking at my team for this week, I've got 0.8 million in the bank. And with the transfers I made this week, that was part of the reason I bought Williams, is that it left me enough money to play the assistant manager chip this week, which actually looks really difficult now. And we'll talk about that later on. It doesn't look like it's going to work out in the end. So I should have just bought a better defender. But anyway, Williams at home to Man United is okay. They do play the FA Cup beforehand. We probably will get a bit of rotation because I still get the idea that Forest are focusing on the league more than they're focusing on the FA Cup. So I actually expect Forest to get knocked out of the FA Cup because I think they'll rotate, and I think their opponents, Brighton, will focus very much on that tournament. We've got Gabriel and we've got Munoz. Very happy with those two. Pickford in goal. I don't love him. What I do with him this week will depend a little bit on what chip strategy I decide. If I'm going to wildcard in game week 31, I don't think it's worth a transfer just to sell Pickford to another goalkeeper for 1 week. I don't think it's what I'll prioritize. I'll probably just roll the transfer if I'm going to wildcard in game week 31. Well, I won't use it on a goalkeeper. If I decide that I'm not going to wildcard in 31 and I'm going to maybe play my assistant manager or something, then I probably will sell Pickford this week. I've got my eyes on Nick Pope. Of course, they double in game week 32. He looked very good in the Carabao Cup final. Of course, congratulations to any Newcastle fans. the first trophy you've won in, I think, just over 50 years. So enjoy it. You're probably not watching this video right now. You're probably out enjoying yourself anyway. So defense is okay. I don't have much depth though. So Greaves and Mikolenko. Greaves, he got him off at half time. I wouldn't be surprised if he's dropped now. It seemed really weird to just pull him of all people off at half time. Then we've got Mikolenko away at Liverpool. Again, like Pickford, it is not good. So I am relying on Williams, Gabriel and Munoz this week. We, of course, have still held Ahmad. Now, if there is a good update on Cole Palmer, I'll probably roll my transfer this week. Salah, Palmer and Burmo, Kluivert, Haaland, Chris Wood, Evan Nilsson. I'm pretty happy with how that's lining up. What I would like in this forward line is to go and get Mateta, and it is to go and buy Alexander Isak. And I have plans for both of those, but it won't be this week. It will probably be game week 31. So I'll have to go without Mateta and Isak for 1 week, and then I may well buy both of them in game week 31. And I guess we'll discuss a little bit more of that in a moment. Palmer, if he's available, I still want him. I still didn't expect many points for him against Arsenal. Him showing up would have been a nice thing for my team, but you know, that meme when you need the help and it's just like, oh, good luck finding someone. And Palmer was that along with Greaves this week. So if Palmer is available, I still look at the next few fixtures of Spurs, Brentford, Ipswich, and actually do want to hold on to him. I don't think Haaland has actually been a very good buy. He got a penalty, but outside of that, he was not involved at all. I think the penalty was his only shot on target in that game. So I don't like having Haaland in my team long term. I actually like a fully fit Cole Palmer in my squad more than I want Haaland long term. But let's see an update on Palmer. And I currently have the captaincy armband on Salah. Now, watching Leicester defend against Manchester United might be enough to go and put me on Erling Haaland. But having watched Man City play against Brighton, I just didn't like the idea of that. And they played the FA Cup on the weekend before, where we're fully expecting Haaland to start. So it is on Salah at the moment. He'll be the most highly captain player again this week, and then it's Haaland. My team on paper this week doesn't look too bad. If I was to change things, I probably would have Isak. I probably would go Mateta, but I don't think Evan Nilsson or Haaland or Chris Wood are bad picks this week. Chris Wood, a few blanks on the row now. We will be looking at him on wildcard about whether we stick with him, but for now, it's okay at home to Man United. Williams, I'd probably change, like I would go to Kirkes if I had the luxury of it. And of course, I wouldn't have Pickford as well. But it's not the end of the world. So I have a couple of options. If I wildcard in game week 31, I think the most likely thing is that I will just roll my transfer this week. If I'm going to delay the wildcard until later, I probably will end up selling Jordan Pickford, but that will still also probably be it. If Cole Palmer is ruled out, I'll probably have to sell him because game week 30 and 31 are really close, that he'd probably be out for both games. I could go and buy Bruno Fernandes, but I think I've missed the Leicester game that I probably would look elsewhere. So just to talk about a few things with my team, also I've got the assistant manager, we'll cover that a little bit. I do think after the weekend, the chance of me wildcarding 31 has definitely gone up because I do think the assistant manager is slightly less appealing than it potentially was. And we'll talk about that in just a moment, particularly because of some of the table bonus fixtures being a little bit more difficult to predict. The Fulham Crystal Palace game in the FA Cup has a massive implication because at the moment, Palace are not predicted to double in game week 33 because they're predicted to lose to Fulham. But if Fulham were to lose to Palace and suddenly Palace were to double in 32 and double in 33, suddenly it looks really appealing for the bench boost. It looks easier for the assistant manager and everything like that. So in particular, on FA Cup weekend, that is the single fixture I'll be paying more attention to than practically everything else. Also, Bournemouth, Manchester City. Manchester City also currently favourites, so all of the projections you're seeing are based off Manchester City beating Bournemouth. But I think based off recent form, it's a pretty decent chance that maybe Bournemouth do beat Manchester City in that fixture. So if we scroll down, at the moment, we have a look at some of the potential assistant managers that I could have played it on this week. The first one is Glasner. Now, I looked at the opportunity of going Glasner from 30 to 32 if I wanted to play my free hit in game week 33. The issue we've got is that Southampton-Brighton game. At the moment, Crystal Palace-Brighton, is Crystal Palace versus Brighton is currently a table bonus game, but we have to get through game week 30 and it remain a 5-place gap. The issue we've got is Palace have Southampton at home and Brentford have Newcastle away. So if Palace were to win and Brentford were to lose, Palace would climb above them. Not only then would Brighton have to win, but one of Newcastle, Manchester City, and Chelsea would have to drop significant points as well for it to be a table bonus game. So I would need Fulham to beat Fulham to lose to Brighton, so Brighton to beat Fulham. I need Palace to beat Southampton, which is most likely. And then I need City to drop points against Leicester, which is just very unlikely to happen. Newcastle to drop points against Brentford, which is probably the most likely scenario, or Chelsea to lose to Spurs. And if none of those happen, and suddenly I've activated the assistant manager in game week 30, and it's not a table bonus at home to Brighton in 31, it's just not that appealing, and I don't think I'm willing to take the gamble on it. The other opportunity we had was Aston Villa, but unfortunately, because Brighton didn't get a winner, if they had a winner in that game and Bournemouth had won, which were some of the predicted results, we would have had Aston Villa having table bonus against Brighton and table bonus against Forest before potentially going to 2 table bonus games for Crystal Palace in game week 32. So the chance of me activating it in game week 30 has definitely dropped. I could still activate it in game week 31, and that is more likely if we get a Crystal Palace win in the FA Cup, and that moves the Crystal Palace double most likely to game week 33. And I could just stick it on Glasner for 5 games. Hope I get a few table bonus games in there. Probably 3 out of the 5 will be table bonus. Manchester City, Newcastle, Arsenal, Bournemouth, and Brighton probably won't be. And hope I get some points there. But if Crystal Palace lose to Fulham, which is the current prediction and the current expectation, I think the chances are I just end up playing my wildcard in game week 31 and saving the assistant manager for the end of the season. Now, if that would be the case and I'm going to wildcard in game week 31, I would probably just roll my transfer unless there was anything negative on Palmer. If I decide to play my assistant manager, I probably would look to sell Pickford. I think Nick Pope is the most likely one. I can't see him losing his place now after he's just played very well in the Carabao Cup final. Roll my second transfer, and then as I said in game week 31, if I'm not playing my wild card, the plan is to go and buy Alexander Isak back, and the plan is to also go and probably buy Mateta that week as well. And that was part of the reason that I rolled my second free transfer this week. So we will be having a close eye on the FA Cup results. The Palace Fulham one in particular will have a big implication about whether I think assistant manager 31 or wildcard 31 is most likely. Even if Palace do win, I still think wildcard 31 is going to be my most likely scenario, no matter what happens in that game. But a win versus a loss will swing things. If Palace lose, I can't see myself not wildcarding 31 now. And we'll just save the assistant manager for one of the final few weeks of the season. Probably game week 35, maybe game week 36, depending on when it falls. But hopefully we get a double in game week 36. And they decide to put some of the fixtures in there. Because as we said at the beginning, it's definitely not guaranteed. So that is a little bit of a ramble for about 25 minutes. Again, we're going to be bearing in mind what happens in the FA Cup when it comes around in a couple of weeks. I'll be keeping a close eye on Cole Palmer. With the results that we had at the weekend, and me not really wanting to gamble on the assistant manager chip too much, I don't think it's really going to be that I decide to activate it this week. I probably will hold off and play it towards the end of the season. Why is that? There we go. Let's try and get my team up for you. So yeah, that is where we're at. We probably won't have any videos now until we get to the FA Cup weekend in a couple of weeks. Then we'll have lots. We'll probably have a Monday morning, Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning video. We'll redo chip strategy then. Wildcard 31, if you don't have the assistant manager, remains the best opportunity. If you still have the assistant manager, you have to wait and see some of the FA Cup results, but I still think the wildcard 31 will probably be the most popular for us regardless. If your team is in a lot of mess and you're definitely wildcarding in 30, I would still wait to see what the FA Cup results are, because depending on what they fall, it will change what our chip strategy will look like, and it might mean that you go for Fulham players or you might go for West Ham players, depending on who wins that. You might go for Nottingham Forest players or Brighton players, depending on your chip strategy and who's going to double as well. Because just if Brighton win and Brighton are going to double, doesn't mean you suddenly want Brighton players on your wildcard, because it might be that you decide to free hit in the big double in game week 33, which I think will be very popular. And then suddenly you don't want Brighton, despite the fact that they're going to double. So there's so much that's going to happen. Once those FA Cup is out the way, it will become an awful lot clearer. But that's where we're at with my team. That's where we're at with some thoughts over the next couple of weeks. A few positives to take away. time to switch off from FPL a little bit after a horror game week. Yeah, didn't go well. Any questions or thoughts? Let me know in the comments. I've got 2 weeks now where I don't have very many videos to make. So I'm more than happy to spend some time every day answering questions in the comments. So if you've got any feedback, any questions in the comments, let me know. As I've said, if you're looking to play your wild card and you want to make early transfers because players are changing in price, I would recommend not unless you're buying players that are maybe Newcastle or Palace because you know you're going to want to own them. Outside of that, I really wouldn't run the risk that you sell someone that you might suddenly want back, or you lose value on someone and suddenly you have to buy them back. So be a little bit cautious. If you've got any questions, do drop them in the comments. If you're watching this over the international break, I hope you're having a lovely time. If you're watching this at the very start, once the video gets uploaded, thank you. And I hope you do have a lovely international break as it rolls around. I'll probably see you on the Sunday, the 30th, once the FA Cup is out of the way. I might do a video between now and then, but I think it's very, very unlikely. So yeah, that is it. 2 weeks off. Have a lovely one. Drop any questions you have in the comments before you go. 2,000 likes is the aim. And subscribe if you're new around here. And I'll be back again very soon.